Okay, and we're live. So welcome to our talent talk this week. This week is called the Big Employer Brand Argument. And that's because on a couple of Facebook groups over the last few weeks, I have been suggesting that employer brand is the font and the palette and the brand guidelines and whatever logo cop wants you to observe, and it should be driving placements. And some people have disagreed with that and said it's much deeper than my definition. So we've got a kind of rolling subs kind of situation here, where we've got 5 or 6 different people who we're going to be bringing on screen at different stages. So I'd like to invite my guests who are on screen today to just now to introduce themselves, and then we'll get going. So Maury.
Right, I'm Maury Hanigan. I'm CEO of SparkStart, Video Enhanced Job Descriptions. I'm based in New York. I'm going to have an opinion about this, so looking forward to it.
Josh.
Hey everybody, Josh Worth here, Employer Brand Manager for Capgemini in the UK. Really looking forward to this. It's something I'm very passionate about, so I'm looking forward to a good debate.
Jess?
Hey, I'm Jess McGuinness. I'm the European Employer Branding Lead for IBM, based from Dublin. And yeah, like Maury, Josh and Adam, looking forward to it.
Do you know something? How international? We've got England, Scotland, Ireland, and the USA represented on here, which is great. Nobody from Wales yet, maybe later. Okay, hi Heather, we're going to bring you on shortly. So my position really is that in 2018, so when I started working in recruitment, generally marketing in recruitment was about making sure that the toast was warm at the breakfast meetings, and it was about making sure that the logo was on the golf balls, and it was about making sure that the company umbrellas arrived on time. And that's really it. It was very analog. And in today's world, I believe that recruitment marketing, can entirely own the talent pipeline right from the total addressable market of everybody you might want to hire now or in the future, right through to handing over to the recruiters. Here are the hot leads. Here are the candidates you need to talk to today about today's vacancies. So I believe that marketing is far, far more tangible and far more powerful than it ever has been. And I also believe that employer branding as an aspect of this can be measured in the same way. So every single landing page and every single part of your career site and your social media and everything else you do to convey what it's like to work at your organization can be measured. So that's the kind of main topic here. Just wanted to briefly talk about, hi Craig, we're going to bring you on in a bit. I just wanted to give you a kind of my definition as well of a couple of things. So my definition of an employer brand is what candidates think of your organization as a place to work. That's not something that you do not create an employer brand. That's what they think. Employer branding is the activities involved in attempting to influence what people think of your employer brand. Recruitment marketing is mostly to do with the channels, and talent brand is about the brand of your people. So your leadership and the peers that people would be working with, and it's employee stories, and it's that kind of thing. So that's just some of my definitions. So opening up, Maury, you said you had some immediate comments.
Yeah. Well, and first of all, I understand I came to this from a pure marketing background, right? I started my career at Procter & Gamble, consumer packaged goods marketing, not HR, not employer, like solid, get the soap out the door into the stores and into people's homes. And it's the reason I do this now, because I understood that recruiting is marketing. And Adam, I'm going to take issue with your definition of marketing, employer brand is clearly a piece of recruitment marketing, but you can kind of measure employment marketing the same way you can measure any kind of brand or consumer marketing. You can measure it to an extent. Can you throw an ad on TV for a car and then turn around and see how many cars you sold? No, you can't. Yet, Mercedes does it all the time. They run ads all the time. They understand that it contributes to what they do. They don't necessarily tie that to a specific car sale, but they do understand what goes on. I agree with you, though, about the employer brand. I think it's interesting that people tell me they're developing an employer brand. And I want to say, no, you're not. You have an employer brand. You can certainly help mold that and shape it. But if the investment banks here in the States or in London or Switzerland decided that they were going to come out as the lovey, huggy, supportive environment and that was going to be their employer brand, they're just never going to do it because it's not truth. It's not rooted in anything authentic. And the idea that you can create an employer brand that's separate and different than what your environment really is just nonsense. So I think you've got to start and separate what is employer brand, what is recruitment marketing, and start there. But I'll let the others talk, and then we'll come back to whether or not you should measure this, because I think you have a measure, but it's not in placement. So I'll give someone else a chance to pipe in before I squash your entire argument.
Okay, well, sorry, one really quick thing about that. So you made the comparison between employer brand and like Mercedes putting an advert on TV. I'm not sure that's the best comparison. I think a better comparison might be with, let's say, PwC. PwC advertise as a tax practice and an audit firm. I think that people make decisions about their career in the same kind of way that maybe a B2B buyer makes a decision, more so than a consumer decision, because most of that's going to be online. So you wouldn't see an advert for come and work at Capgemini. You wouldn't see an advert online. On TV for that.
Well, it doesn't matter what the channel is. And actually, GE just did a whole bunch of TV ads here in the U.S. about GE as a place to work. But it doesn't matter what the medium is. I don't care if you're advertising on social media, you're advertising at a career fair, wherever it is, you still get your image out there. The channel doesn't matter. It's all about managing the image, getting visibility for your message. That's really where we're going.
Okay, so here's where. So first off, here's where I think the channel does matter, because if you're primarily online, you can measure everything. You can't really measure everything from an ad from radio or TV.
No, you can measure clicks, you can measure views, you can't measure persuasion. I can click on your website. Doesn't matter. You told me, you convinced me, you moved the needle, you got me to click. But that's a different measurement than real effectiveness. That's a response.
Yep. Okay. Josh, Jess?
Yeah, from my perspective, I'm supposed to different to Maury in that I come from a recruitment background, a HR background. So I suppose, I've kind of always have the candidate application process and experience in the back of my mind natively. And I probably had to do the reverse of you guys, look at the kind of the marketing piece, and really kind of hone in on that subset of skills. I suppose kind of what we would kind of be the same as what Maury had said, it's the authentic nature of your brand, looking at, what your employees feel about working in a particular part of the IBM business and really trying to kind of sell that message. I do think, consumer expectation is having an impact on candidate experience and their expectations, how a consumer is delivered an experience by, consumer brands is impacting on their expectation of us, So I read a really good quote from IBM, and it's like, the best last great consumer experience you have becomes your minimum expectation going forward. So that would kind of be my point on the kind of consumer versus the candidate experience. The trackable piece, that's a really interesting kind of story, and I think for us in employer branding, we all struggle with that, there's lots of channels in recruitment marketing where we can track things very effectively. And then there's lots of other stuff about our brand, that perhaps goes out unorganically, and maybe that's not as trackable, but yet that potentially has the most impact. So I'm not sure if we're going to solve the discussion and the argument here today, but, open to kind of getting some different opinions and taking them on board.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
definitely really agree with that. So, coming at it from, I suppose, a couple of years of recruitment marketing experience now, and the whole tracking side of it for me is just a whole world on its own. And where does that stop? Do you actually stop or see employer branding, recruitment marketing stopping at the inception mark, at which point the person joins a business and they get inducted and that sort of stuff, or do you actually see that playing a wider part in their career potentially at your organization? So it's something that we look at Capgemini as well, and the effect that you can have on an individual through the recruitment marketing efforts and your talent brand, to how successful they are, how much of a cultural fit they are for your organization. And so when you start to look at tracking, I think it doesn't just stop at the clicks and the general sentiment of the content you're sharing, but actually the success of that individual in an organization and whether they fit the job and whether the culture is right for that individual.
Yeah. Okay. So I had lunch with the specific topic is I had lunch with a designer yesterday. A guy who's head of design at a big global recruitment agency, and his background is designing beautiful works of art, basically. And I gave him my view. I told him I was doing this session, and I gave him my view, which is every single thing that you do should be measurable against the talent pipeline. And he said that he isn't doing that, but he is prepared to accept that probably does now need to happen. Maury, I think you had you were going to squash my argument entirely. Yeah. So I think, let's...
All right, let me squash it. Just remember it was David Ogilvy who said, half of advertising is wasted. We just can't figure out which half. Even the best in classic advertisers have understood that you can't pinpoint impressions. You can't pinpoint, what's really moving the needle. You understand you got to advertise. And when you're advertising or marketing, it needs to happen. But I think Josh honed in on it. I think the measure of a solid employer brand, a really effective employer brand, isn't in the placement numbers, isn't in any of your hire numbers. If you're willing to overpay the market, you can pretty much get anybody to come to work for you. By and large, there are exceptions to that, and that's a different argument. But you can get them in the door. I think the real measure is in your retention numbers. That the measure of a good employer brand is in retention. Is your employer brand accurate, and does it allow people to make a well-informed decision to opt in or opt out? Right? You don't want people coming to apply and take a job if your environment is not a place where they're going to thrive and they're going to stay. So if you're trying to say, oh, we're this wonderful place, all you do is, play ping pong and foosball and eat at this snack, and, this is like your buddy, it's like going to the pub, and they get there and they're actually expected to work, then you've got a completely fictitious employer brand, and you may get people in the door, but all you've done is increase churn. So I think it has nothing to do really with what is traditionally associated with all the recruiting and TA function, which is, placements. It's at the other end. It's how long have they stayed? And then to some extent, at what level are they succeeding? Are you bringing in the right people? That's your measure. And that's a harder thing because a lot of other factors go into that. How good is your management? How good is, everything else that happens once they stay there? But retention's really the game. It's not really placement, it's retention.
Yeah, okay. So Josh, Jess, what do you think about that? Working in employers, retention, is that a good measure of the employer brand?
Yeah, I'd say so.
I think it's a great measure, and I think, like, back to what Maury's saying is, it's probably linked to the kind of fit for an organization means that they have ultimately the skills for that organization, and particularly where we're going to be coming to an environment where skills are on a consistent basis over the next 5, 10 plus years. We really need to be looking at candidates with the right skills that can move with the organization and transform with us. So yeah, I think that's a great point. I think we in recruitment would have less of a job finding candidates if the retention piece and the engagement piece was managed as effectively as it could be.
And for me, I think it's a really good way, because if you look at, say, cost per click, when you're running a targeted advertising campaign, you can't really qualify just how good those clicks are. They could be people who are just not interested in your brand at all. They could be people who fancy, just checking out and getting on the job ladder. Not somebody who's actually interested in joining your organization for purposes other than to pick up a paycheck at the end of every month. So I think for me, it's absolutely something to look at as a way to measure the success of your branding.
Yeah. Okay. I did say to everybody that I'm going to be a little bit brutal about moving people and bringing them back. So I've just got rid of Maury, and Neil Daly's coming in to join us. So one question about retention would be: is that going to be? Do you think that that's going to be as important in the future? Because I understand that people are rejecting the concept of full-time permanent employment more than they ever were. And retention of relationship with people throughout their career, as opposed to their career with your organization, is potentially something that's going to become more important. Although Maury actually posted on Facebook yesterday that only 10% of people in the US are actually not employed. Yeah, no, I was going to say the gig economy is a myth, but I think it seems to be changing. Certainly in the UK. I know lots of people that don't work full-time permanent anymore. Does that make a difference in terms of the way that you go about employer brand?
I suppose it depends whether or not it's actually happening in your organization. Back to Maury's point, is it actually something that happens in your organization? Great, well then you can talk about it. But if it isn't, well then it kind of can't be something that it isn't happening. I think, for us in probably in IBM, we're a little bit more focused around maybe the boomerang hiring. So probably be something that we're looking at to kind of see, to have a relationship with candidates and employees on a longer term basis. Overall.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Neil, welcome.
Thank you.
So, okay. You've probably heard some of what we've been talking about so far. Do you want to just give us a quick introduction to who you are and what your sort of take on all of this is?
Yeah. I'm Neil Daly. I'm the Employer Brand Manager for EDF Energy. So we are a large energy generator and supplier. And I think that in itself sometimes has a interesting take on employer brand. But before I come on to that, I think answering some of the points there just very quickly, I completely agree. I mean, I'll come to the measurement piece, but I think in terms of what are we looking for and how are we, kind of where does the journey stop? I think the piece especially for us and generally across the board is exactly what we need to be looking at. What we're saying to market. And then that kind of authentic piece of, are we being authentic externally to then be true to ourselves internally is crucial. There's always that danger that, you promise that you're a Rolls Royce and people arrive and you're a Skoda. Nothing against Skodas, but using that as an example. And then obviously people go, well, this is what you promised. And then people leave. So yeah, I mean, retention, absolutely from our point of view. That is a key piece. Always has done, and I think inherently within us as a market, we come out the back of being a French state-owned organisation. It used to be one of these things that people would arrive as a graduate and leave with a gold watch. So how much employer branding would you need to attract people to an organisation like that? Very different here in the UK with us. But that retention piece is key. But I think sorry, I'm having to rattle through everything because I'm trying to kind of catch up on all the bits that were touched upon. But I think that piece around that kind of either the boomerang hires or that flexibility piece, absolutely. I mean, you can't dictate what's going on in the market. If that's what people are wanting, if that's how people are viewing their career, and if they want to see those options from the big companies out there, then you have to be willing and able to match the needs of how people want to work differently as time goes on. You can't just sit and say, well, that's all well and good, but it's 9 to 5 days a week for us, and embed that in. So I think it's absolutely part of the employer brand, as long as it is something that you are not just saying out there which is something we have been caught short doing. We can offer this, we can offer that, but then actually for certain roles we can't. So you have to be quite particular about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Jess, you've got to go now. I think you've got another meeting. So
great. Thanks. Nice to participate.
Joining. Really enjoyed your contribution.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye for now. Okay, Neil, all really, really interesting points. Craig, welcome. You're also in the USA. Do you want to just quick introduce yourself? I think probably a lot of people are going to know who you are anyway because you're quite famous. But just give us a quick introduction.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm Craig Fisher, and I'm the head of marketing at Allegis Global Solutions, a big RPO and MSP provider globally, and I'm the employer brand SME for the organization. So recently I was the head of employer branding for a big software company called CA Technologies as an RPO resource for Allegis Global Solutions. And now I get to do that for all of Allegis's other clients, the Amex's, HSBC's, MetLife's of the world. So I get to do some fun things that I've already written the white papers about and proven it for other organizations.
Okay, great. So what do you think about my statement that all employer branding activities and assets should be measured against placements?
I think that's patently ridiculous.
Can you give me? Let's talk about some examples. Examples of what should not be measured against placements, and why.
Some things have to be measured because you have to be able to prove to your leadership in your organization that you need more money to do cool stuff. That's basically really one of the main reasons to do it. But also you have to know what works, right? You can't A/B test something that you can't measure at all, right? So if you don't know what works, then you can't keep producing, quality work. But there are plenty of things that you can measure, let's say, chatter and sentiment of, but you can't tie directly to hires or to retention. And as Jacob says, what does that even really mean, right? And I think retention is only a little bit about your employer brand up front, insofar as what hiring managers promise the job will be. But that's really a hiring manager issue and not an employer brand issue, if you ask me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Heather, I'm trying to bring you on screen. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to remove you and accept you and invite you again. Hopefully that'll work. Okay.
I've got another point there.
Carry on. Yes.
There are things you can absolutely measure, right? You can measure employee engagement with their networks. That's something that you can say, did we turn on brand advocacy? And when we did our reach grow? And if it did grow, did we make hires from that extended network? You can tie those things together. Loose correlations are generally actually good enough to prove to upper management that something's worth doing more of.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And what are the things? So just going back to the things that you kind of can link directly to placements. What do you think?
So I think saying that something should be linked to placements or hires is a bit of a stretch. I like saying, what is the source of interview? If you can say that any marketing activity's got a candidate as far as an interview, then you as a recruiting organization or a recruitment marketing organization have done a good job, because beyond that, it's the company or the hiring manager that makes that final decision. And you can, to some extent, influence hiring managers' opinions by employer brand by putting it out there widely enough, even sending your Facebook ads to your hiring managers saying that, our promise is true, our promise is transparent, and it can influence the hiring manager to actually tell the right story when they're hiring that candidate to make that job be what it is actually supposed to be.
Yeah, no, very good point. Okay, so
Although
I suppose
aspirational, I suspect, for many organizations.
No, I've seen it work. I've had hiring managers say, you know what, you've actually forced me to be a little more transparent because I'm seeing what we're showing the world.
Yeah,
I think if you're not advertising to your own executives and hiring managers with the same ads that you're showing your recruiters, you're missing a big opportunity to showcase what you're actually doing. Because if no one sees it but job candidates, right, then the internal organization doesn't have the opportunity to understand better what it is you're actually doing.
Yeah. Well, and I'd say encourage them to, be part of that message. I mean, if you're doing employee referral or you're turning on your ambassadorship, you want them, actually advocating. They need to be part of the message, and that does hold them kind of their feet to the fire a little bit if they go onto Facebook and say, here's what it's like to work here, or here's why I'm working here. Yeah, then they've got some pressure to live it. But as I said, I think it's aspirational. We see people doing it. I see a lot of people going, oh my God, my hiring managers, if I could just get them to do that. Yes, that's the goal and what we should be striving for.
That's the hardest behavior in the organization to change, right? I say this a lot. Hiring managers are not good at two things, managing and hiring.
Yeah.
Right? They're in their job because they were good at their old job, not because they were suddenly great managers and expert recruiters. That's just not the case. They think they are, but they also have budgets. And so they're trying to run their little fiefdoms with the lowest possible salaries for the best possible outcomes. And so telling people that a job is different than it actually is to get them in the door is common practice.
Yeah. And let me just build on something Craig said. Go ahead, Neil, sorry.
That's right. No, I was just going to say, I think that in itself provides an opportunity, because I agree. I think, that certain hiring managers, anyway, I don't think we can tar them all with the same brush, but certain ones do, as you say, do have that tendency. But if you can actually start being in a position to pinpoint who those people are and address it with them, then in terms of trying to fully embed that kind of employer brand and our kind of proposition across the business, you can start sort of picking off those ones and bringing them on as advocates. They're the ones who need to be advocates more than the ones who are putting up their hand saying, use me, let me talk to the world. That's great. We can come back to them. But it's those hiring managers who are perhaps over-egging the pudding, which is a too terribly British phrase, but to try and get those people through the door. They're the ones that we need to be working with. And I think it provides a tremendous opportunity to work with them and get them on board. And if we can't make the most difficult people advocates of our employer brand, then I don't think we're doing the job right.
Over egging the pudding. Okay. But let me just go back
that's an English phrase.
One of the things Craig said about, let me just ask Craig, because I thought he made a great point about, how do you measure what the real sentiment is? And one of the ways you do that is just do a net promoter score. I mean, it's something the talent board through the Candies is really encouraging. It's really looking at, would a candidate, encourage other people to apply, other people to go. There are measures out there. None of them are perfect, but there's a whole trove of data you can collect, assuming you want to put the time and the energy into it.
Yeah, most RPOs nowadays are good at net promoter scores with hiring managers, but hiring managers don't understand what that actually means. You have to actually explain to them that if you give us a 4 because you think we're pretty good, that's a terrible score. Right? So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, I came across a recruitment agency about 2 weeks ago who have a team of 25 people in a net promoter score team who are constantly phoning candidates to find out what they thought. Yeah, 25 who constantly phoning candidates to find out what they thought of all their experience. Slightly different subject. But Neil, what I wanted to ask you was, you've been in employer brand with EDF Energy for some time now. What's changed over the years you've been doing this?
I think from our point of view, we've been on quite a terrible to bring out journey already so far, but we've been going through quite a journey whereby when I first started, we didn't have an employer brand. We was very much sort of trading off that corporate consumer brand. Yeah. We've then worked with that to create what we think is a fairly authentic and effective employer brand. But I think where things have changed for us specifically are, we are doing less recruitment externally. We're doing quite a lot of internal changes, but we're not going to market in the numbers. What we are doing in our external recruitment is we're looking for very different types of people than we were 2, 3, 4 years ago. And I'll come back to that. And I think now what we're really looking at is how our employer brand is being used to tackle some of the other changes that we've got internally as an organization. It doesn't, as we've just been saying, it doesn't stop at the front door. We still, yes, of course, we still need engineers and we still need people to work in call centers, but we're now looking much more at innovation and those sorts of solutions to solving energy problems. So we need completely different people out there. We need to market ourselves as an organization very differently to what we used to be. The perception of us is very different, and that's also an internal piece. Where different parts of our business are changing markedly, and we can't necessarily lead that, but we have to be completely embedded in those different business units to be able to, as they quickly change, to both internally and externally communicate what's going on. Because I think externally, obviously, it's to be able to let people know what's going on within our organization and therefore why they should join us. But internally, I think it's vital to, we tend to, I think as organizations, we tend to talk externally far more about changes when actually the people who are being affected are our internal, our employees. And if we're not bringing them along with our journey and explaining to them the changes and what part they can play in it, we're missing a substantial part of keeping our high-performing employees, giving them the opportunity to see what else is going in the organization. Because as soon as you leave gaps in people's knowledge, they'll think, people see monsters in shadows. They'll just suddenly go, oh, something's going on here. I'm not sure about this. And some will go. So I think what I've seen internally is how we've had to use both our employer brand and our employee value proposition, really tell a far clearer story about where we as a company are going over the next few years, to ensure that everybody knows what part they're going to play within that journey.
Yeah, no, very good points. Absolutely. Steve, welcome. By the way, Helen, I tried to bring you on screen, but it said incompatible. I will try again. So I'm randomly bringing people on here. Well, not randomly. I am asking them first. I'm bringing on people who have been
Helen,
clearly got a lot to talk about on the in the comments. By the way, I can't keep up with the amount of comments on here. This is clearly a really, really thought-provoking issue.
And Helen might need to use another browser. She may need to use Chrome. She may be using a different browser that doesn't work.
Maybe on a mobile or something. Yeah, Helen, if you're able to use Chrome, great. I'll try and bring you on again. Steve, do you want to just introduce yourself and tell us your thoughts on this subject?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Steve Ward. I do a number of things, not least work with Adam at Candidate ID, developing the recruitment agency end of the business there, which is growing, which is good. As well as that, I work with organizations on talent attraction strategy, a little bit of employer branding for unsexy brands, I always refer it to, not the sexy ones, and social recruiting is a big part of what I've been involved with the last 12 years or something now. It's ridiculous. So yeah, that's me. Oh, and on this subject, I'm with you, Adam. From the top line statement of our goal should be. Let's work out how we can track it and how it works in a second. But I think our goal of good employer branding activity should be to get more placements, more successful placements with greater retention at the back end of it. And I think that's got to be the goal that we're always aiming at. I like Craig's point about interviews. I think that's probably a fair assessment than placements, because I think an interview generally is considered a successful journey if somebody's been invited to interview. But I feel the same as you, Adam. I think we live in an age now whereby we can paint journeys and we can monitor journeys, and track journeys, and therefore identify some of the factors that led to a successful hire. Okay. I'm with you.
So let's quickly specifically talk about tracking, because we can track things that we couldn't in the past.
Yeah.
Just give us some of the kind of possibilities that exist today that some people might not be aware of.
Well, absolutely. I mean, obviously we all know we can kind of track numbers on email marketing and web page stuff. But I think we can go a lot further than that now. We can start tracking. You mentioned the head of design guy at the recruitment agency. Hey, we've been talking about sourcing through imagery for the last 5 years. Why not track success of hot images that we use online? So I think every piece of digital asset, from social profiles to images to job pages to meet the team pages to external to webinars, everything that we do to tell the story of our organization and what a fantastic place it is to work, or what an innovative place to work it is, should and can be tracked as to who clicks it. What I do agree with, I think Maury made a good point, I think Craig did as well. Tracking sentiment is different, and sentiment plays a big part in employer branding. Sentiment and reputation, I think that's the bit that's less easy to track, but you can, as in define track, but it's measurable, and it's a lot of companies use sentiment as a measuring tool to success of their brands. Not so much in recruitment, but certainly in branding. So yeah, I think any digital asset now can be tracked. I think that's the fun game we're in now. Good times.
Yeah, absolutely. Just from a technical perspective, things like cookie tracking, IP recognition, fingerprint allows you to track people based on things like what device are they using, what browser are they using, what's their screen resolution, what operating system are they on. So you can do a lot of kind of investigative, like behind the scenes investigative sort of work that tells you precisely which individual is kind of coming through the funnel based on what they're doing and what they're looking at.
Yeah.
Helen, welcome.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. So do you want to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course.
Tell us what you think about the subject.
I'm Helen. I'm talent marketing manager, just to change up the job title there at Sage. It's an interesting debate. I nearly typed something in it. We probably but if only we treated our people well and created great cultures, we wouldn't need to talk about all this employer branding. It could just happen. I'd be out of a job. But I think for us, and it's interesting, obviously, we were talking about referrals. Like, referrals for us is a big focus, but also a lot of focus on our employer advocates. Because for me, a lot of the role needs to be internally focused, and I totally agree on the hiring manager piece. They make or break it, and for us, they often break it at the moment. So we've actually switched focus completely away from, I can spend money on recruitment marketing. I can create you a really great glossy ad that goes all over. I can do a career site, but ultimately I can bring them to an interview and the interviewer is late. They don't know how to sell the company. They look bored. They come to the office. They haven't got their laptop on day one. They didn't know how to get to the office in the first place. Their team don't take them for lunch maybe on the first day. So I think a lot of our focus is around the internal piece, and that's where we move away from, well, it's all employer branding, but we move away from a role that becomes much more strategic around how do you work with your leadership, your comms team, your reward team, your training team, and how do you link that all together? Because we're wasting money, current state, spending all this money on all of the job boards and on career sites, and then someone comes into the business and straight away they're disengaged and then they leave.
Yeah, no, really, really important point. Talk to us about, so the specific subject that we're talking about really is around employer brand. I believe employer brand should be tracked against filling vacancies. So what you've just said about the wider kind of employer brand context is all really valid, and I completely agree. And it's one of the reasons why, what you just said is one of the reasons why people find it challenging to really contextualize employer brand and define what it is, because there's so many different aspects to it. However, from the purposes of, like, I get artists on one side saying, don't you dare try and measure my work because it's subjective. And then on the other side, I get people going, I'm only interested in my work generating placements. Where do you stand in this
I fluctuate, but I think ultimately we've got to hire great people. So ultimately, I sit in the talent acquisition team myself, and ultimately it's about finding the right person to fit the role. So I get that it's difficult to measure it, and it is subjective, and there's sentiment, and we have to persuade them, things like that. But ultimately, we've got to bring people into the business in the first place. We've got to hire talent. So currently, I'm sat on not on a hire, not on a fill. I'm on an interview. I'm definitely on. I was with Craig on how many people, the conversion to interview. So your silver medalists, your gold, and your bronze. I'm at that bit. I've always kind of sat in that kind of area.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that is a really good metric because it does matter. I think it does matter that your employer brand generates placements, but I think it also matters that your employer brand generates a pipeline and generates a warm bench. And my ultimate kind of utopia for employer brand is that you have got every single person you might want to hire now or in the future wants to work for your organization. They're actually standing queuing outside your door because you've done such a great job of creating a great place to work, which is the employer brand, and then conveying that in a really accurate way. And literally people are standing outside in the street queuing up to come and work for your organization. Craig, Josh, welcome back. Craig, you've been very active on the underground kind of conversation on the right-hand side. Tell us the main things that you've been talking about, and what are people most interested in the chat?
So we've been having a kind of a side discussion about candidates self-select to name their source of influence for being at the stage of interview, and that's a flawed system, right? If you have only a certain number of drop downs in an ATC, an applicant tracking system, an ATS or a CRM, then generally the candidate is going to think of their last source of influence, which may not be the first source of influence, which is not, it's not accurate. So your marketing efforts, and this is how we do marketing anyway, right? We hit people with one ad, then two ads, maybe with not even any call to action. Then we send them an email. And that's the way it works. I mean, there's a patented formula for this, right? That works very well. So I believe that what they see in their peripheral vision about your organization is a lot of what we do in employer branding and recruitment marketing, and can be measured by the acceptance rate of emails or phone calls, or in some cases even text messages, the response rates that you get. But it's more an influence than it is a real hard statistic. So I think the source of hire is, or the source of influence is tricky. I think there are a lot of things that come together to create that, and you can measure some of it. But if you're getting more good candidates to the interview stage, then you're doing your job.
Yeah, really good point.
It's a buyer's. It's like a customer journey. It's a buyer's journey. You've got 90 days ahead of when I was at Carphone Warehouse. 90 days ahead, you make a decision on buying a phone, and there's so many different sources. I think the research is 18 different sources that a candidate looks at before they make a decision, and so therefore I completely agree. You've got to have kind of a suite of things that you're measuring. And so are you measuring, what's the conversion been on the careers site? What is the kind of engagement on your social channels, your talent pools, and how many, the acceptance piece like that, to have a look at how the EVP that you've created is being perceived out in the market. I don't know if you can then come up with one number, is it an NPS? I don't know. But yeah, it has to be a suite of different things. That's what marketeers do. So that's what we should be doing.
Yeah, no, very good point. Maury, thank you for mentioning David Ogilvy earlier, because David Ogilvy went to the same school as me, although not at the same time. He's, I don't know, about 80 years older than me. Anyway, his thing was also about, it was the 50% of advertising works, and I just don't know which it is. He was also one of the guys who said, who coined the term about somebody needs to see something 7 times before they take notice. And so, Helen, what you've just said is, I think Boston Consulting Group say it's 16 different online sources of information that a candidate will look at before deciding whether to apply or not.
I don't know if I believe that.
Yeah, well, I think it depends. So first of all, people have got, the key thing is for me, when I started in recruitment in 1999, candidates could hardly get any information about what it was like to work at an organization or what a job would be like. And they had to go through the process hand in hand with a recruiter to find out all the information. Now they can find out, what does the coffee taste like if I work at Sage or at Capgemini? They can find out, what football team does that hiring manager support? They can find out loads of information, and they can make decisions themselves. And so as a result of that, I believe that they want to talk to recruiters less and less. Everybody says, oh, we've got to, recruitment's a human activity, and, humans need to be involved in it. Oh, sorry, I don't say not everybody says that, but a lot of people do say that. I don't think humans want to talk to humans until they've actually made a decision about whether or not they're interested in working for that organization. So as a result, employer brand and recruitment marketing generally needs to do a much more heavy lifting than it had in the past. And that's why I believe it needs to be more measurable, so that you're not, so that you absolutely do understand which 50% is working and which 50% isn't working. Josh, what have you been? You've been off screen for a little while. What are the kind of main things that you've reflected on from what we've been talking about since you were here?
So for me, the big one is the, hopefully you can hear me, yeah. Big one for me is the touch points and the inception points at which a candidate actually sees your brand, thinks, okay, that's great, I'm going to continue with my day, and then push on maybe 2-3 more times. They see it and actually think, okay, now I'm going to apply. That's a big one for me. And I've heard the figures banded around, different figures from different sources, and it can take up to 6 months sometimes for people to actually decide to apply for a job. Yeah. So I absolutely think that you need to be on this journey with the potential candidate. You need to be seen, and this is where the designers come into play. So they need to be active. You need to be creating the really visual, beautiful content. But likewise, it needs to be trackable, because if you're posting things on Facebook, on other social platforms, using programmatic advertising, it doesn't count for anything unless you've got the statistics to back that up, that actually you're attracting X amount of people, and X amount of people are potentially then going to be brought in for interviews, and potentially they're hired. And for me, that's a big point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so Craig has said high touch beats high tech every time. And my response to that is that high touch is unsustainable at scale. So high touch is absolutely sustainable in an executive search world. Here's I think we need to think about 3 different levels, or maybe even more than that. So you've got people that make decisions. So in terms of candidate journey and candidate decisions, people that work in McDonald's may well go and work in KFC if they get 50 pence an hour more to go and work in KFC. They're probably not doing huge amounts of deep research on a company's values and corporate social responsibility before making that decision. People at an executive search level are probably doing nothing, and they just need you to come to them, and they'll pick up the phone to you if you've made an appointment. It's all those people in the middle, what I call qualified volume, accountants, lawyers, marketing people, all of those people that they probably want to do a lot more online, and they will do it themselves, and they will take that kind of 6 months to make a decision about things because they're in demand. So I believe we need to consider this in terms of 3 different kind of tranches of people based on the way that they go about making decisions.
So one of the things we see here now is that it's not necessarily 6 months to make a decision, but it more increasingly is from the time a decision is made, at least 6 weeks before someone can start work, right? And so that kind of falls into where that 6 months stretch starts to seem like it's the 6 months decision process. It's not. The decision is made much sooner, but people aren't starting work. It's not a 2-week notice anymore. It's 6 to 8 weeks is very standard, which is kind of insane. And so could you possibly influence someone wanting to come to work faster than that, not wanting to take a week or two off, wanting to really push their employer on getting out of there faster with a good employer brand, the right story, the right transparent, measurable things, better ways of communicating the benefits of the organization, things like that? I think so. I also think we were just talking about is high touch, sustainable at scale. I think it is. So we did a thing at CA Technologies where we literally converted recruitment coordinators to what we call talent assessors. They looked at every applicant that came into the system, and this is thousands a month, and put them in a yes, no, maybe pile compared to the job, and actually sent personal emails to all the no's, right? So that the ones that didn't get any further in the process didn't just fall into the black hole. They were actually answered by a real person. And I got emails from those people saying that they'd been applying to my company for years with no response, and they actually got a response from someone and loved it, absolutely loved it, and talked about it and told their peers that this company's actually responding, which was pretty cool. I invited one of them to coffee with me because he was in my town, and that's why he looked me up and sent me the note. And he was just applying to the wrong job. We hired him. It was great. So you can't, you can't do small things to keep that human interaction right in the process.
Yeah, there's about levels, isn't there? Jaguar Land Rover gets 750 applicants every single day. And there'll be companies in the USA that get a lot more than that. I don't know what kind of a team. They would need 10 people focusing on that.
If you have every people in Manila or India, it's possible. It's doable. And that's what we did.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Helen, you're on mute, I think.
There you go. I was trying to, just in case there was office noise. I think it's also getting the balance between tech and human. Obviously, there's a lot of talk on AI and taking over jobs, and that worries me a little bit. I think the human connection and the human interaction that we have with candidates is so important. Human to human, that's how we create, that's how there is emotion. But I think that's how on the volume scale, tech can support that. If you have a great process, obviously, putting tech into process that doesn't work is not great. But I think that's where you can have certain things in place for the volume piece that can help that. Therefore, your recruiters are freed up to add that human connection and that human the process as well.
Yeah, I'm just going to read a couple of Heather's comments because unfortunately Heather Hamilton was going to join us on screen, but she had audio only and it wouldn't allow me to bring her on. So I think Heather, a few of Heather's points. It's possible to measure some of employer brand, but it's expensive. I'm not sure that it is expensive. People in employer brand, they're focused more on execution than measurement. Absolutely. I think they should be focused more on measurement than anything else, personally. Heather also said, high touch is sustainable at scale when your employees see themselves as owners of the brand. Absolutely. And I think that it would be wonderful where everybody in an organization felt like they were part of recruitment. And that rarely happens. And in fact, other than startups, it basically doesn't happen. I haven't seen it. So some very good points there. Josh, you've been in recruitment marketing, employer brand for a number of years. What have you seen that's been changing?
For me, it's the internal perception that actually marketing does get you places. So rather than just putting money behind agency spend, which we're increasingly seeing still, I think people are starting to realize the benefits of actually putting a bit of money behind the marketing efforts, trying to attract the right people way in advance of when you would find typical agencies going after people. And they're starting to see that through measuring, you can actually provide good return on investment. You can provide the statistics that prove this amount of people have come via this channel and these people have been successful in the business. So for us, we've really been looking at educating people internally to then help us with our external efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. Couple of quick things. Neil Harrison, The Virgin Media case study shows how important candidate experience is to the bottom line. That's true. Have you got any other examples? Because I want to see any other example. One other example.
I've only seen that one.
No, I've never seen any other examples at all. So somebody else said something. That was, oh yeah, Neil, really, really good point. Neil Daly, a good employer brand should help keep the number of applicants down, ensuring you get quality, not quantity. My view, as I mentioned earlier, is that an employer brand should engage the total addressable market, and it should. Utopia is that down at this side, you've got just the people who are kind of ready to work for you today. But in the meantime, you're bringing everybody else kind of through the funnel. And you've really got the choice. And actually, you don't need to advertise at all because your database is the number one source of candidates. So one quick question would be, how much or otherwise is your database important? This is it's for you, Craig, as well, because you've run internal recruitment at CA and others. How much is your database important? Because I think most organizations neglect it.
So your database should be very important, right? The problem is, you're right, recruiters are lazy and they don't search there first. Hiring managers as well. They go straight to LinkedIn or maybe even job boards and start a new sourcing effort every time, which is ridiculous. You should have a pipeline. The number one thing that customers / hiring managers complain about is we don't have a pipeline. And so if you can constantly show that you do have a pipeline and it's actionable, and tech can help this. There's lots of good tech out there that can help this, right? Hiring Solved, Ideal, Candidate ID, even to a certain extent, can help cull your database, right? And stack rank and do all the right things that you would want it to do in order to understand who you've got and where they fit in the process, how likely they are to accept your message and go for an interview. So it should be very easy. But I think the problem is very often we install the tech and we don't put anyone in charge of using it properly and ensuring that it's actually used. So it sits there. It looks cool on paper, and very rarely do we see the actual case studies that showcase how good it actually works, because we're not paying. That's the thing that employers strip out. They strip out the services piece of the tech very often to feel like they've got a good deal, but then nobody uses the tech.
Yeah, good point. Josh?
I feel like hiring managers and people who naturally could be using this kind of tech just aren't supported in the way that they need to be in terms of the education and the coaching to be able to make the most out of it. I think if you look at what they're doing, you're right in what you say, Craig. They're just going out there, they're starting up fresh pipelines, they're looking for more people on LinkedIn, and they're not looking internally at the abundance of data that they've actually got there. And I think if the education piece is there around, okay, so you need to be leveraging this pipeline or this piece of data to then go out and create target audiences from that, or replica audiences and that sort of stuff, then there's far more power to come from that. And I think we'll really start to see an improvement in building the pipeline, keeping the pipeline warm and engaging with them if we have that education up front.
I think if you could segment your CRM properly, right, and someone is actually there saying, all right, these are the silver medalists, these are the boomerangs, these are the people that we don't know yet, but we want to know, and keep those pipelines fresh and keep good content going and do it accurately. But that takes a recruitment marketer, not a recruiter. And so you've got to have somebody in charge of doing exactly that.
Yeah, very good point. Okay, we're on the hour, so I'm conscious people have probably got other things to go and do. I want to thank Jess McGuinness, Josh Worth, Maury Hanigan, Craig Fisher, Neil Daly for coming and joining us as scheduled. I want to say I'm really sorry, Heather, we weren't able to bring you on screen. And I also want to say special thanks to Helen Durkin and Steve Ward for being last-minute impromptu cameos. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I am looking forward to finding out what people have been saying in the comments when I go and read them later on. So thanks very much to everybody. And look out for our next talent talk, which will be in a week's time. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye.